As a filmmaker, one of the most useful exercises I've found is to break down scenes by my favorite filmmakers to see exactly where they put the camera, what coverage they got, and how they told the story with the materials they had. Of course, there's no way of knowing exactly what ended up on the cutting room floor, but I can look at what did make the film. I'm here to share my thoughts on how a specific scene from some of my favorite films impacted me from shot to shot. And as always, I'm interested in hearing how you felt as well. Today we'll be going through Thomas Vinterberg's 2012 hidden gem, The Hunt, starring Mads Mikkelsen. I've been a fan of Vinterberg's ever since his Dogme 95 film, The Celebration. He's spectacular at molding drama and conflict using the complicated relationships between us humans. There's typically not a lot of action, explosions, etc. However, they still feel just as tense and engaging. This scene from The Hunt exemplifies his ability to slowly add ingredients from different characters, stoking each character's fire, pitting them against each other, putting them in awkward scenarios, until ultimately something is bound to happen. The dam eventually has to break. Before we get into the scene, let me explain briefly what has happened thus far. Warning, if you haven't seen this film, stop this video right now and go watch it because this scene happens later in the film, almost towards the end, and what I'm about to say includes massive spoilers. Since Vinterberg's films would not be complete without an amazing ensemble of perfectly fleshed out characters, I'm going to be going through a fair deal of names. First, Mads Mikkelsen plays Lucas, a divorced kindergarten teacher in a small Danish community, although eventually he begins to date Nadia. Lucas's best friend in this community is Theo, who is the father of one of Lucas's pupils, Clara. After developing an innocent crush on Lucas, Clara decides to kiss him. However, Lucas rejects her and scolds her, making Clara feel dejected. After seeing a pornographic picture her brother showed her, Clara makes comments that cause the kindergarten director to believe Lucas has committed wrongful acts with Clara. The entire situation slips out of control, and Lucas is shunned by the community as a pedophile. Lucas loses everything: his friendship with Theo, his relationship to Nadia, his job, and even, tragically, his dog. Things go from bad to worse when he is attacked and beaten by the grocery store employees after just trying to buy food. Lucas is released without charges after a hearing, yet the community is still suspicious of him. On Christmas Eve, Lucas has had enough and decides to attend the church session that everyone is at. Even speaking through all of that, it is amazing how Vinterberg can weave such complicated Shakespearean stories based around one complicated and misunderstood incident. We're going to start this a bit later into the scene to save on time. However, in the beginning, Lucas walks in, sits down, and exchanges looks with Theo. In this first shot, it is a frontal shot of Lucas. This movie and this story is about him and his POV. When you're beginning any film, it is important to ask yourself, whose movie is this? Who is the protagonist? Yet you also want to ask this of every single scene when doing your scene analysis homework. This scene is Lucas's scene. We follow his emotional journey and see the world from his point of view. We have this first shot that we will come back to several times. As a matter of fact, all of these shots will be repeated. It is a close-up on Lucas with a medium depth of field. He's isolated from everyone. However, they're all still in sight, seen lurking in the background. Shot 2. This looks like it was done on a medium-sized lens, like a 50 if I had to guess, due to the compression of foreground and background objects. It is a wide of the children's choir entering the space, wearing bright red sweaters that pop out. Shot 3. A long-lensed, perhaps an 85mm, close-up of Nadia, Lucas's ex-girlfriend, who leads the children's choir. Again, this is from Lucas's perspective, so the positioning of the camera is going to be as close to Lucas as possible, having her almost looking into the lens. Shot 4. This shot begins to show how location and set design are just as important when it comes to shot construction and telling your story. These grand church pew sidings serve as fantastic visual dividers between characters. Lucas is extremely isolated and cast aside in this shot. However, it looks like there is a blue light being cast on him, the moonlight from outside, as opposed to the rest of the patrons who all blend into the warm yellow tones that the candlelight provides. This isolates Lucas even further. It is a medium on Lucas, potentially from Nadia's perspective. She sees Lucas as alone, cold, and isolated. We return to shot 3 on Nadia as she continues to put the children in place. Back to shot 1 on Lucas for the moment we knew was coming. This shot stays on Lucas, following such a superb performance in a close-up, showing someone who has been ostracized by the people he loves. Shot 5, there she is. From Lucas's perspective, with another long lens, we see a medium shot of Clara, the girl responsible for this entire situation. Back to shot 1 on Lucas to see his reaction to seeing Clara. Back to shot 5 on Clara as she spots Lucas. We are in Lucas's perspective. Clara is looking directly into the camera, at us. Think about moments like this in other films. Usually you will see a shot and a reverse shot, but Vinterberg cuts according to how people are feeling, several times, over and over again, as people's feelings are continuously changing and evolving. You'll notice throughout this scene that he checks in with everybody all the time, as if we are the audience looking around at everybody asking, how are you feeling? And now you. And how do you feel about that? And then how do you feel about what they just did? We're back on shot 1 on Lucas as he continues to tear up, and we see a subtle lip twitch. Something is boiling up inside of him. Whether this was directed or not, Vinterberg uses real human moments like this to help build that tension. Shot 6. A high wide of the entire church, where we really get a scale of just how many people are there. Shot 7, a great contrast in shots. We go from a wide to what looks like an extremely long lens close-up of Lucas from behind. Maybe a 100mm to even 200mm lens, as everything is very compressed into a tight space. We get our poster shot, which shows Lucas, a broken man, tightly squished into the center of the frame. He looks straight into the camera, as it is from Theo's perspective, which will be shown in the next shot. Shot 8, from Lucas's point of view, we get a shot of Theo. I think it was really intelligent placement of this guy and this woman behind those large pew sidings, as they might have been very distracting otherwise. The first person I looked at in this shot was Theo. It's important to show Theo, but it's also important to show him surrounded by the community, which furthers the idea of a community together against Lucas. Lucas's wife whispers something into his ear. Back to shot 1 to see Lucas's reaction to this. Back to shot 5 on Clara singing, but clearly unable to stop noticing Lucas as he is breaking down. Back to shot 1 on Lucas as he just cannot seem to let it go, rightfully so. Shot number 9, another long lens close-up on Theo this time. I don't think it is as long as Lucas's, just because with this one we still want to see Theo surrounded by community. Theo looks straight into the camera, as this is from Lucas's perspective. Shot 10. We break the steady, long-lensed shot formula the scene has been using and cut to a low-angled, somewhat Dutched, handheld, wide-lensed, perhaps a 35, shot on Lucas, somewhere in the middle of his view of Clara and his view of Clara's father, Theo. I really love this break in the structure Vinterberg has set up as the pot begins to boil. I spoke a bit about the fulcrum in my previous video on Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the moment in which the rest of the scene pivots. I still believe the fulcrum comes later with Lucas's action, but I do believe the moment Theo's wife whispers into his ear and Lucas clocks this, I believe this moment is the catalyst that sets the rest of the scene in motion. Before, everyone was sitting down, tense, not knowing what was going to happen. But it wasn't until this moment that things begin to slip out of control. Back to shot 9 on Theo as he tries to focus his attention away from Lucas. Back to shot 1 as Lucas boils. Fantastic reaction from this extra right here. Not over the top, but just the right amount of concern for what this man is doing in front of her. I heard a wonderful quote from Thomas Vinterberg saying, "Acting is all about hiding. If you want the actor to be angry, you tell them to be as nice as possible, hiding that anger. If you want them to be drunk, You tell them to act like you have everything under control. This becomes so poignant in this scene. Lucas begins to sing, trying his hardest to hide his feelings. In this scene, his feelings are just too much. He cannot help but cry. He cannot help but kick the seat. But when he does, he tries to reel himself in and hide his true inner emotions. He even tries to sing, but it's not working. So he resorts to leaving. Shot 11. This appears to be a bit tighter than shot 2, and I do believe it is a different shot because the focus is going to be elsewhere in a moment. This is a medium wide of the choir with Clara in great placement, front and center. Lucas enters the frame as he gets up to leave and we rack focus to him. He stays to the right, keeping Clara within view. Shot 12. A high-angled shot of Theo as his wife continues to whisper into his ear and they sit next to their son. Theo braces himself as Lucas walks out in the middle of the song. The shot pans left and tilts up to become a wide shot, including Lucas into the frame. I really like the positioning of these extras. Nobody is behind Lucas. It's almost as if Lucas is speaking to the entire community. Shot 13. We crossed the line here. Shot 12 establishes Lucas on the left side of the frame looking right. With this shot, we cross over to almost a French over behind Theo's head on Lucas. I really like this choice here, as it really helps create another subtle undertone of chaos. Shot 14, we cross back to the original side for this shot. This is an interesting choice to shoot Theo from almost a profile rather than straight on with him. We want to be looking straight on with Lucas at this point, feeling his emotion, not necessarily Theo's until the very end. This shot is a medium close-up, perhaps you could argue from Clara's point of view. Back to shot 13, crossing the line again. We believe this is between Lucas and Theo, but when Lucas says he decides to cut to Clara, watching the destruction. I believe this is a continuation of shot 11, getting as much coverage on the scene as possible while they're there. This is so fascinating because they've crossed the line again. Now Lucas is on the left, looking right. They decide to shoot the coverage of Lucas on both sides of the line. This next shot really looks like shot 9, the long lens shot on Theo. Perhaps Vinterberg let the cameras roll throughout the scene and got Theo's coverage here, but this could be pure speculation. For now, I'm going to go with my gut and call this one shot 9. Back to shot 15, still on the original side of the line. Shot 16, this is a new close-up on Theo. Now we are just with him, a bit more in his line of sight, as he is getting hit by Lucas. We cross the line again, back to shot 13. Shot 17, this is a new shot on Clara, a lot closer. A close-up, isolating her, and seeing how she is feeling about what is happening. I really feel that this is a continuation of shot 14, the shot on Theo, and they just panned and tilted over to Lucas. Me personally, when I'm shooting a chaotic scene like this, if I have enough time on set at the end of the day, I will do what I like to call an emotional shot, where I have the cinematographer feel the scene, panning, tilting, moving to whatever and wherever he feels. This makes the audience an active participant, looking at the action as if they are actually there, following the emotion of the scene between the characters. Back to shot 15 on Lucas as he gets in closer. Back to shot 16 as Lucas grabs Theo's head. Back to shot 12, the high wide as Lucas grabs Theo's head, showing the effects all this is having on the community. Theo's wife, Theo's son. Back to shot 15 on Lucas, but it's closer now. Not because the camera moved in, but because the actor moved in. Back to shot 16, more of a profile on Theo. Back to shot 13, crossing the line again. And after Lucas leaves, we pan back to see Theo's wife's reaction. Back to shot 6, the high wide of the church as things begin to calm down a bit and Lucas is escorted out. Shot 18, a new shot, a medium shot of Lucas as he is escorted out into the cold. Shot 12, the high-angled shot showing the aftermath of Theo. And finally, shot number 19, a new shot of Theo from a completely different side. I believe he was shot during the previous confrontation in profile while he was being hit to save for this moment. Now, he is full frontal, and we see that perhaps he is seeing the light of day. What a great way to end the scene with just a little bit of hope.